Hi, I'm Toni Steere. I'm the Director of Adoption, Foster, and Orphan Care at Houston's First Baptist Church in Houston, Texas. Legacy 68.5 is our church's opportunity to step into very tender, sacred intersections. We like to say that we exist to connect, equip, and sustain adoptive, foster, and orphan care communities across the trajectory of the journey. Well, the first word that comes to mind as I think about how caring for the vulnerable has impacted our culture is actually not one word, it's two words: uncommon generosity. When I think about the way that our community has stepped into spaces, not just financially or materially, but really showing up physically, emotionally, showing up spiritually for families who have given God yeses to adoption and foster care. I've seen that in generous ways. We want church, Big C Church, to be the safest place on earth for the vulnerable, because we were all once vulnerable. We have all needed someone to come and build and battle on our behalf, and we found that in for many of us who are believers, we found that in the person of Jesus. And so as we think about how we engage the vulnerable, we actually want to emulate the way that he has come close. So when I think about pure religion, I think about abiding in Christ and having our gaze not being a glance, but a fixed gaze on Jesus, and how his presence changes the way we bring our presence into any space. Jesus listened. He asked good questions. He came near. He wept. He met practical needs. When I asked moms what the most difficult thing that they were facing, or what the biggest challenge was that they were encountering on their journey, over and over and over again, I heard moms say, well, our story is just different than anybody else's. Our journey just looks different. I feel isolated, unseen, unknown. And so we sat as a team with that information and asked the question, well, how could we show up in that space? And we had a sweet volunteer who came to us and said, I wonder if we could just show up in a mailbox, which was a curious question to me. And so she and a group of her dearest friends and members of her Bible study began to pray specific scriptures over moms in our ministry. And as they would pray, they would write. And they would bring those cards to our office, and we would send them in the mail, and we would show up in mailboxes across town. And we did this silently without knowing the impact it was having until we came to a situation where a family was facing an extreme hardship and quite a bit of crisis in a foster situation. I was out of the country, my phone had been washed, there was no way for them to connect with me. And I came back to find out all that had transpired over a 4-day span of time. And as I sat before the mom, and I wept and she wept and we wept together, and I just apologized and said, I'm so sorry that we were not able to be present with you in the midst of this very difficult time. And she said, but you were. And I said, well, how were we present? She said, I got cards in the mail this week that had been mailed much before the crisis ever hit. And God had spoken to the women who wrote these cards in a way that only he could do. And as they wrote faithfully, God met me faithfully as I opened that card. Months prior to us having this crisis, you had assigned us a meal provider. And like clockwork, she showed up on just the right day at just the right time to provide a meal. Sometimes we think showing up has to be big. And I think Jesus showed up in really small ways that had really profound impact. in big ways too, but I think we would do good as the church to take a step back and ask, what are the really small ways that we can observe, listen, and then deeply impact the life of a family by doing something that to us might seem inconsequential? I think that intersection is what God has called us to as we practice coming near to the vulnerable. And to me, this is pure religion.